Last time that Rahu and Saturn came together in Pisces, now they do conjunct each other about every 11 years, but when they come together in Pisces, the last time was 1968. And historically, I went back, that was the year that Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. You know, people don't like when I say this. Everything happens for a reason. And I always believe it's a divine reason. My belief is we keep coming back and back, reincarnating. There's no such thing as a good or bad event, really. It's all about growth and transformation. And we come here in certain time frames in our life to learn what we need to learn spiritually. Because essentially what we're all doing is we're evolving beyond this level of consciousness to eventually, as you and I both believe, be one with the divine.
Joni Patry, welcome back on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
I'm excited about the year of 2025. I think this is going to be an amazing year for change, transformation, and opportunities.
I heard you say that from April 2024 to the summer of 2025, we will go through a catastrophic change and the world will look very, very different.
Yes.
We're about in the middle point of that time frame that you set. Where are we now and how are we seeing these changes unfold in the world right now?
Well, we are at a point where, this is actually a 9-year too. So this means that this is the ending of a lot of old ways that needed to end for a long time. We're coming to completion. That's really what it's all about. And for so long, I've been talking about the truth. The truth is going to come out. We're going to see the reality and the truth of things. And it's already happening. And as you probably know, the truth heals. And there's a great healing. One of the things that I'm really excited about is where health and healing are going to be going this year. This is the most exciting thing because I think there's going to be a lot of discoveries with health, with healing, progress. I've always said that the way that health is going to be achieved is not necessarily through just taking supplements or taking medicines, but through working with vibrational frequencies. I think this is a new trend that we're on the cutting edge of, and it's going to come out. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing, healing and health. And of course, the end of all the old ways that weren't good for us, that weren't helping us grow spiritually or grow in consciousness. This is the year that all of the things that really were preventing us from our highest good are going to start falling away. So it's endings. But of course, what that means, this promotes new beginnings.
What does it mean for us to be in a 9-year?
It means it's endings. 9 is right before the 1. So I'm looking at 2026, as you've probably heard me say, as the year of a golden age. But we have to go through a few things still this year to complete, to bring it to its finality. So this is a beautiful thing to be complete and finished with so many things that have been bubbling up and boiling over. Now it's time that we can end all of this that has really been difficult for us in terms of making the world a better place. And it's not going to be perfect yet. And it never will be because, my goodness, we're in the third, fourth dimension. And this is a vibrational frequency where we've come to learn lessons. So it's never going to be perfect. Let me get that straight. And everything is cyclic. That's actually what astrology is all about, the cycles of ups and downs. And one thing I really want to say about the cyclic process is if you understand the cycles, then you work with them and the flow of life becomes easier. This is what we're meant to do. I know so many people talk about the law of attraction, which I'm a huge believer in. Yes, what we think we create in our lives. But I think the missing component with that is we have to work with the cycles. So there is just a better time to do things, right? I mean, you wouldn't plant a plant that you wanted to flourish that grows in the summer in the winter months. It's just there's a better time to do things. And one thing my teacher would always say is if you want to get a suntan, would you go out at midnight in January or would you go out at noon in June in the Northern Hemisphere, that is? So in other words, there's just a better time to do things when you understand these cycles and you work with them. With the law of attraction, this is how we're going to make life work. So what we're talking about right now is the cycle, the process of the cyclic process of things coming to completion this year, which is the number 9. But most of all, what I've been seeing is with the planets, these planetary energies. And like I was telling you, I just wrote this book because this book, it just came out. So you can get it on Amazon now. I don't even have the copy. I have the author's copy. But in this book, I really wanted to talk about the cycles. And the most important cycle that I've been working with is the one with Rahu and Ketu. And of course, a lot of you out there don't know what in the world is Rahu and Ketu. Well, they aren't even planets, but as a Vedic sidereal astrologer, I work with these. They're called Rahu and Ketu, but Rahu is actually the north node of the moon and Ketu is the south node of the moon. And what they really are these points in space where truly the sun, the moon, and the earth align. So this is all about the alignment. And when you bring the sun, the moon, the earth together, you have eclipses. So that's what Rahu and Ketu do. They bring about eclipses. So as an astrologer, eclipses are one of the most important tool for prediction. So going back to the Rahu Ketu thing, these points in space, if you want to just look at them as a planet, you can. So what they do is they're in a sign for 18 months. So that's a year and a half they're in one sign. But for them to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac, it takes 18 and a half years. So what I found was when these nodal axes went into particular signs, in Rahu and Ketu, I call it an axis because they're exactly opposite. So it's like this, they go around like that, they're exactly opposite. But as they went into particular signs, they always had major events. And I found the sign and I predicted it before, and I'm going to show you my other book. I predicted in this book, Rahu and Ketu, which I wrote in 2017, I predicted COVID, that 2020 was going to be a time when something catastrophic would happen that would change the world forever. Because as I went back every 18 and a half years, when they were in this particular sign, that it was always something big that happened. I think I told you this before, because the last time that before COVID that they were in, where Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius, it was 9/11. Then I went back 18 and a half years from that. It was the AIDS virus, 18 and a half years from that. Kennedy's assassination, 18 and a half years from that. And we had the bombing of Hiroshima. So I saw it coming again, and I thought, oh my goodness, something catastrophic is going to happen. And it did. So I wanted to write this book to tell everybody when the next go round is. And that's going to be 2038. So
I wanted to ask you there, Joni, when you looked into that prediction of 2020, were you able to foresee that this was going to be an element that had to do with health? Or
yes,
travel or different things that
that's the issue that is really hard. You've got a major point there, because to be honest with you, I thought, well, the last time it was 9/11, I thought, well, it must have something to do with terrorism and a terrorist attack. That's what I thought. But I knew it was going to change the world forever, because there were, in this alignment, it's not just Rahu and Ketu being there. There's other planets, such as the 3 outer planets. When they align with Rahu and Ketu, they will give it a different meaning. But there was definitely something about terrorism. And thinking back, looking at this realistically, I do think the AIDS virus was bioterrorism. It was chemical warfare, biological warfare in a way. Now, I don't think people have totally submitted to that, but I think most of us do believe that. And astrologically, it says that.
So interesting, because, we talked about the cycles of Rahu and Ketu, the next one being in 2038.
Mm-hmm.
What are you foreseeing into that next cycle?
That one, humanity? Yeah, that is the most extreme one of all, because what I find happens at that point is Uranus and Mars will align with Jupiter, with Rahu all in Sagittarius. So Mars being aligned up with it can be something with attacks. Uranus means something sudden and unexpected. And Jupiter expands it, makes it bigger than normal. So I think it has, again, this planet, we go up and down cycles. People are still not evolved enough, even at that time, where they don't kill each other. To me, I think it's so insane that human beings kill each other. Where are we in evolution and consciousness? It's not very advanced, right? So obviously, it's not going to be that evolved by that time. So I think it's going to be a catastrophic strike. Something giant is going to happen. But with advanced technology, it's going to be something even more catastrophic. Why do I say that? Because Uranus rules technology. And I think in the next few years, our technology is going to take off like never before, never, ever before, especially in the next year and a half. Starting the end of May of 2025 through November of 2026, you're going to see an expansion of technology like never before. I went back historically, and that's another thing as astrologers that we do. We go back historically to look at similar planetary alignments in particular signs and look and see what happened before. And when we see what happened before, we know we're going to have a similar result, just like I did with Rahu and Ketu, but also the outer planets. The 3 outer planets deal with the collective unconsciousness. So they aren't particularly something individual. In the whole Vedic system of astrology, we use the planets that are visible to the naked eye to really look at what's going on personally in our chart, in our life and in our chart. But the 3 outer planets deal with the collective unconsciousness, which will deal so much with global events that are happening. I mean, they form generations. You, with all the people you went to school with, will have Neptune in the same sign. And Neptune stays in a sign for 12 years. Uranus stays in a sign for 7 years. And Pluto, with its elliptical orbit, depending on where it is, can be in the same sign for 12 to 30 years. So they form generations. But what I think is really cool about the outer planets is they also rule the development of humanity in terms of what we are able and capable of understanding. So they deal with our level of consciousness as they evolve and go through particular signs, and also as they align in certain planetary configurations, such as conjunctions or oppositions. They actually spur on humanity in a way of a level of consciousness that continues to grow. It's like if you go back to the late 1900s, it was the 19th century, the late 1800s, excuse me. It was like a time of spiritualism. And a lot of people were, they had seances. Even Lincoln had seances in the White House. But there was like this whole trend of a belief in spirit. And at that time, Neptune and Pluto were conjunct. This opened up a whole level of consciousness. And as I talk about in the 1960s, Uranus and Pluto were together. And this created the whole evolution of where, people started to change and rebel against the old outworn systems that didn't work anymore. So there was this huge rebellion. And, so much went on with the Vietnam War, with the level of racism that was happening in the world, and as well as 2 assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. What a time. And even JFK in the early 60s. This was all this outer planet configuration that really ruled what was going on in the world. So as an astrologer, we look at these outer planets along with Rahu and Ketu, which form eclipses. And eclipses, like I said, are the most powerful tool we have as astrologers, because the symbolism is that when the lights of the moon and the sun are darkened, we go into a place where we see and know things we didn't know before. It brings things out we didn't know. And of course, anytime truth comes out or revelations like this, there's a healing for evolutionary consciousness on our planet.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. One of my favorite words that you use is catalysts. So looking at a lot of these events as also catalysts, like we could look back to 2020. And although it was a time of a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, it was a catalyst for a lot of people that knew how to ride the wave per se, and step into a new iteration of their evolution. So what catalysts do you see coming up in the next year or few years, maybe up until even 2030, which you said also before the call that was a big year as well, that we're going to see a lot of opportunities for growth?
Yes, absolutely. So the catalyst that I see happening astrologically with the planets is that, well, we're going to talk a lot about Neptune. Neptune this year is a big proponent of mysticism, spirituality, and change. I mean, it wakes us up in a way no other planet can. I always say Neptune rules scandals. It rules secrets. But on the higher vibration, it deals with spirituality and ethereal things beyond this world. So Neptune's going to come together with Saturn this year, 2025. And when Saturn changes signs, and remember, I'm always talking about the sidereal Vedic horse placements, not the Western tropical. Saturn will change signs March 29th to 2025. And of course, Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. When it changes and it starts to align with Rahu and Neptune, the big catalyst is going to be, well, first of all, for 2 months, this will be from March 29th to May 29th. Saturn and Rahu will come together because Rahu travels backwards and Saturn goes forward. So they will cross in the early degrees of Pisces. And then by May 29th, we're going to have Rahu go into Aquarius. And but for those 2 months when they're together, I went back historically. And the last time that Rahu and Saturn came together in Pisces, now they do conjunct each other about every 11 years. But when they come together in Pisces, the last time was 1968. And historically, I went back, that was the year that Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. So there could be some major assassinations during this time or attempts. Now I pray that it's attempts just like before, because one thing that, people don't like when I say this, but one thing that I feel like was a catalyst for change for good and bad, but it just created the big change that we see right now was President Trump. His chart is so radical. And we know how, radical and extreme he is. But I always say, like him or not, he is a catalyst for change. And that's what's going to blow up and happen. And revelations are going to come out because of his positioning. And but if we have some kind of major assassination or attempt or whatever during that window of time, there's going to be a big wake-up call for the world. And this isn't even just about the United States, needless to say. There can be assassinations or attempts during that window of time in every country around the world, because this is what happened before. As an astrologer, we perk up and say, this could happen again. So, but what it's really doing, aside from any political belief, what you want to believe, and we're all swayed by, political beliefs, right? And we can't help it. It's like our belief system, every single one of us have a certain belief system based on our previous experiences, right? That's where belief is set in through our childhood experiences, what we went through. And we form our beliefs about politics, religion, the world. So everyone has a certain belief, and it's okay. It's just who we are. But I believe there's going to be this huge wake up about belief and a big transformational change about what we know. And it's like these people who are in political positions, whether it be Robert Kennedy Jr. or Trump or Emilio Macron or any of these leaders, they are playing a role or a part in our evolution to change things, whether it be even Putin, who knows? All of these leaders are playing a part to make the world transform and change. And sometimes it's not good, I agree, but here's what I believe. And I so wholeheartedly believe this, that everything happens for a reason. And I always believe it's a divine reason. And I know that's really hard to believe when you think about World War II and all the atrocities that have gone on in planet Earth. But in the giant big picture of things, everything is happening for a divine reason. And it's always, always a proponent of growth, for us to learn our spiritual lessons and to grow as a humanity. And my belief is we keep coming back and back, reincarnating. There's no such thing as a good or bad event, really. It's all about growth and transformation. And we come here in certain time frames in our life to learn what we need to learn spiritually. Because essentially what we're all doing is we're evolving beyond this level of consciousness to a higher level to eventually, as you and I both believe, be one with the divine. And that's what all of these crazy, unexpected things that are going to be happening this year with world leaders and what's going on in the world. And what we have to do as spiritual beings is see beyond what all the politics is about, what all the people are talking about, because there's a higher lesson in all of this. So there is huge change and a big catalyst going on this year for us all to wake up and see the truth. And the truth is really going to come out this year. So this is the biggest proponent of change and transformation and the catalyst that's happening. And going back to the Saturn-Neptune, they're going to come together during the months of June through September. And then they will come back together in 2026, but they're going to be the same degree. And Saturn rules reality, and Neptune rules delusions and illusions, and actually fog. So, people have been talking about a lot of fog that's been coming about. But what the fog can mean is literal, or it can also be symbolic, because a fog means we can't see things clearly. But Saturn brings out the reality and the truth. And sidereally, they're going to be together in Pisces. And to me, Pisces is the most mystical or compassionate healing sign of the zodiac. So that's what's going to come out with the truth of healing. And that's one of the things where, yes, we could be looking at another, I don't want to scare people, but another type of pandemic of sorts, because Neptune does rule disease, but Saturn means there can be a healing of disease. So when these pandemics or these diseases do surface, it also gives us more information in the area of healing, because people are focused on it. So as I said before, one of the things I'm so excited about is there's going to be a new way of healing and looking at health and how we can actually bring longevity to people, longevity to our lives. Because when we really get into a place of health, our vibrational frequency will be at a different place. So that's how we're going to start looking at health. And, as Nikola Tesla always said, when you understand the universe, and Einstein actually said this, that it deals with energy, vibration, and frequency. That is the key to healing. And Tesla said, if you understand the numbers and the meaning behind the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you will understand the workings of the universe. And one thing that I absolutely love about Vedic astrology, and really all astrology, it is so mathematical. We are not talking about just getting a feeling or, psychic awareness, any of that. We're talking about working with math. And astrology is a science. And the people that say it's a pseudoscience, they've never studied it. And so many great people have studied and believed in astrology. I could name off So many. Well, for one, Einstein, and another Edgar Casey and Carl Jung. I mean, they were all big believers. They knew astrology worked. I know it works. So my big mission is to get people to wake up to the power of astrology, what it can do for our lives to give us guidance. Because really, I believe this, the most powerful thing in the world is to know the future. And if you know the future, you will make better choices and run your life completely differently than you have in the past. Trust me.
And is it even possible that we're actually remembering our future? Because now quantum physics is saying that time isn't linear. We're multidimensional beings. So you spoke into Neptune also representing the fog. And I wanted just to tell a quick story of when I was in Egypt. We spent some time inside the Great Pyramid, and I was the last one out of the pyramid from our group. And I looked up to the sky, and there was a bunch of fog. And all of a sudden, I started seeing like these little simmerings of light coming from the fog. And as soon as the clouds cleared, I saw a craft, black triangular craft, making zero noise, hovering above the pyramid. And then it just hovered away. And I was left like, what did I just see?
Wow.
So I bring that up because you said that from now until March 29th, our understanding and relationship to alien or extraterrestrial life will shift. And right now we're seeing, like in New Jersey, for example, people are seeing orbs, lights, drones, whatever you want to call it, in the sky emerging from the fog. So what are we learning about alien life, and what is Vedic astrology pointing toward?
Well, the way that I look at alien life, and of course I'm always looking at where the planets are relative to what and when we will have a better connection to this. There's actually, in Vedic astrology, there's 27 nakshatras. And this is what makes Vedic astrology what it is. So if you take the zodiac, which is a 360-degree zodiac, and you divide it into smaller portions, which are 13 degrees, 20 minutes, a sign is 30 degrees, you will end up with 27 of these portions of the zodiac. And they are called the nakshatras in Vedic astrology, but their meanings are actually derived from the stars in that portion of the zodiac. So there's a particular nakshatra that is associated with aliens in space. They call it the Sky Watcher, and it is called Shatabishak. Some people call it Shatabisha, but it depends on what part of India you're from with the pronunciation. But I call it Shatabishak. That nakshatra is fully in the sign of Aquarius. And so Rahu is about to transit into Aquarius. And for the most part of 2025 and part of 2026, it will be in this nakshatra. And Rahu is like, wherever it is will bring your attention, your focus, and manifestation. Okay. So like I say, these nodes of the moon are so important in terms of our awareness and where they are. So while Rahu is in that nakshatra, we will have proof of alien life. So if that's what you're asking, and of course, we need help. I think they're here to help us. They are so advanced. Let me just say this. If they wanted to harm us, they definitely could have already. But we need the help, and they're around, and they are definitely going to step in, and we're gonna have proof. Even though, it's funny, with proof, people still won't believe. But for the most part, it's going to be definitely more evident. So all this is coming in the next year and a half.
How does that relate to some advancements in technology that we might witness in the next few years?
I think you already know the answer to that. Because that is why our technology is going to advance so much quicker, because of their health. And it's been thought of before that is why a certain time frame, starting from about, really since Roswell's incident, that our technology has advanced so quickly from that point in time, because we've had help and we're going to have a lot more help. And that's why I say, watch and it's funny though, because this particular nakshatra also deals with technological advancements and it deals with aliens. So putting that together, I think that kind of gives us the answer you're looking for.
March 29th, you talked about Saturn, but there's also going to be an eclipse.
Yes.
That day. So
yes.
What is that telling us?
Okay, so this is monumental because that day we have a solar eclipse in Pisces, and then hours after the exact eclipse, Saturn moves into Pisces. And what's really interesting, if you look at the charts where all the planets are in March and April, they're all grouped up about, I think about 7 planets using Neptune, the outer planets, 6 or 7, but when you put the moon in alignment with the sun. And they're all together in the sign. And Venus is the planet that really makes its mark during this time. And also, I want you to note in the night sky in February, you're going to see an astronomical show with Venus. Venus is going to be so bright. And actually, it's going to be February 1st. Yes, February 1st, that we're going to have a lineup also where Venus is around 3 degrees of Pisces sidereally. So we have Venus, Moon, Rahu, and Neptune all line up. You're not going to be able to see Neptune, of course, but you're going to be able to see Venus and the moon together in Pisces. But what's remarkable coming forward to this eclipse, the 29th, Venus goes retrograde. And Venus is actually the planet that goes retrograde the least of all the planets. In other words, the time that it spends being retrograde. And so when Venus goes retrograde, though, it's closer to the Earth. So it's brighter in the sky. And it stays in Pisces for 4 months, actually from January 29th till May 29th. Around that time, Venus will be in Pisces. And that's very unusual because it usually stays in a sign for 1 month, because from our vantage point, it travels with the sun. So the fact that it's staying for such a prolonged period in Pisces, it's sign of exaltation. This is the sign Venus loves to be in. So when a planet's exalted, it means it exudes its positive energy the most, okay? So it's there, it's with Rahu, it's with Neptune. And I feel like there's going to be so much beauty that comes out of this, because actually Neptune is said to be the higher octave of Venus. And Venus rules the arts. It rules beauty. It rules love. And actually, it's going to be at its brightest, furthest elongation in the eastern horizon. And it's an evening star, which means Venus is everything in the month of February, March, April. But while it is there, it's going to be Valentine's Day. It rules love and relationships. So I think this is going to be a beautiful thing. And things of the arts, movies. Neptune actually rules movies and cameras and photography. So we're going to have these wonderful, healing, life-changing movies and works of art and writing and things that really bring out the potential of love and healing in our world. I'm really excited about this Venus transit. And here's another thing I want you to know about Venus. Of course, the Mayans were really big into watching Venus. because probably it was the brightest star in the sky. And when it's an evening star, that means you can see it. It's in its best placement. The Mayans actually said when it becomes a morning star, that is potential for war and negative things to outbreak in the world. But while it is the evening star and you're able to see it in the night sky, and it is retrograde and it's exalted, it is in Pisces. While Jupiter is in Taurus, Jupiter will remain in Taurus till May 14th, sidereally. So we have what's called a parivartana. That's what we call it in Vedic. But really what that means is that Venus being in Pisces, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is in Venus's sign by being in Taurus, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. So this means these two planets exchange signs of rulership. And that empowers those two planets. It's like it makes them one. And Jupiter rules money and wealth and prosperity and expansion, while Venus, I always say this is my saying, Venus rules billionaires, while Jupiter rules millionaires. And both Jupiter and Venus are the rulers of their camps, planetary camps. But they are the powerhouses. They both rule wealth and money. But Venus rules opulence, like extremes of money. So the fact that these two planets are in exchange like this, my prediction is that the stock market, finances, and money in the world are going to really explode during this time. So what I'm talking about is really the whole time that Venus is in Pisces, which it will be in and Jupiter is in Taurus. So between now through about mid-May. And then in the summer months, we're going to have some major shifts that are not so positive, but let's just go with the time. So I'm telling people it's a time to invest and take advantage of the economy when it really lights up. Another thing that I want to say before I forget is that Saturn rules crude oil and Neptune rules oil and gas. And actually, like gas in terms of, airy, gassy, which can deal with, fuel. So we're talking about both of these ruling oil and gas, right? Because Saturn rules what's underneath the ground, which is oil and coal, where Neptune rules gas. So putting those together, one major prediction I'm going to say while those two planets are together, we are going to have some major events with oil spills and explosions around the drilling of oil because it's too much. And President Trump is saying, drill, drill, drill. Well, there's consequences in that. This is not just about, money in the world. The earth doesn't like this. So there's going to be some problems with this extensive extreme oil drill that's going to happen. So the earth is going to fight back. It's going to shake too. It's going to cause more earthquakes. So watch how this whole oil expedition thing is going to blow up and cause some major problems in the world.
I would love to open up the space for a moment to talk about our divinity and our connection to our higher consciousness, because I've heard you say that the closer that our galaxy gets to the Galactic Center, which is the name of your website, this is where we get closer to God consciousness. So looking at a bigger picture, where is the galaxy now in relationship to this Galactic Center? And what's really the meaning of this center? Why does it connect us to God consciousness?
Yes, I love that because the Galactic Center, it sits somewhere in around 6 degrees actually of Sagittarius. And it's in the nakshatra called Mula. And Mula is the nakshatra that deals with destruction, actually. And when you talk about where the Galactic Center is in in the heavens, in the universe from us, there is actually a bigger concentration of black holes than anywhere in the from our perspective in the universe. And if you really think about what a black hole is, it's like this huge suction of energy. And it actually deals with, here's my belief, and I think a lot of scientists are in alignment with this, that this can deal with going into different levels of awareness, consciousness, and or different dimensions. So anything that gets sucked into a black hole goes into another dimension. Now, none of us will be able to go through that and live through it to tell each other, but I kind of think it's almost like a death process. When you go through a black hole, you go into another dimension. So that area of the zodiac in Sagittarius, in Mula, is like this. But there is a book that was written by Swami Sayuteswar, who was Paramahansa Yogananda's guru, which is actually how and one of the reasons why I started studying Vedic astrology, because I wanted to understand the astrology of the great seers, the saints. And Yuteswar wrote this book called The Holy Science. And the Holy Science is about the precession of the equinoxes. And what that actually is really the times of humanity that take us through a cycle of about 26,000 years. So what I'm talking about is the starting reference point of our zodiac. 2,000 years ago, the tropical Western zodiac, which is actually based on the cycles of the sun and the seasons. The sidereal zodiac, which sidereal means star, and the stars are constantly moving from our vantage point. And so when we say that where our signs are and that they're different in the sidereal zodiac, it's because the stars have moved, and the stars are the constellations of the signs. Of course, there's more constellations than just the sign, like Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. There's other ones, but still, with our zodiac, everything has been moving and shifting backwards. So 2,000 years ago, the tropical aligned with the sidereal, but over time, the stars are moving, and they move 1 degree backwards in the zodiac every 72 years. So if you go through all 12 signs of the zodiac, this is where the 26,000 year cyclic process happens. So right now, where we are in this cyclic process is the starting reference of the zodiac, where it moved backwards away from 0 Aries, which is the beginning point for the tropical Western zodiac. And the tropical Western zodiac's beginning of the zodiac is always 0 Aries. It never changes. But Vedic sidereal takes into account the fact that the stars have been moving backwards. And at this point in time, our reference point, the beginning, is at 6 degrees of Pisces. So the Galactic Center is in Sagittarius.
We're getting closer.
So we're getting, but we're a long ways away from that point of God consciousness. And they say when we get to the Galactic Center, our planet gets closest to the Galactic Center, that is when consciousness will be at its highest point. But we are a long ways away. And for it to go, the whole precessional cycle to go to the point where it is closest to the Galactic Center. Now, none of this is going to be exact mathematically, but it's around, we have about another 10,000 years to go. Okay.
That's nothing.
So here's what I say. Just come back, reincarnate in 10,000 years, right?
I'm curious there. What's the furthest point in terms of the degrees and the signs from the Galactic Center?
It was 2,000 years ago. And 2,000 years ago, here's the thing. It's a 26,000 year cycle, but it is, like a circle where you go to one point where it's the highest point to the galactic center. That's the half circle. So it's around 13,000 years from the darkest point to the highest point, because that's half of 26, right? So the darkest phase was 2,000 years ago. That's why we have about 10,000 years to go to that point. That's halfway. And then there's an evolution of consciousness that reverts backwards. But at least I will say this, we're growing towards the evolutionary point of the highest point in consciousness. And one more thing I want to add. So we're going through these different signs. So 2,000 years ago, the sidereal went into, and it travels backwards. So from 0 Aries, when it went into the sign backwards from Aries, which is Pisces, it started at 29 degrees. And all the way to this point now, going backwards in the sign of Pisces, we're around 6 degrees of Pisces, a starting reference point. And so, you've heard a lot of people say we're going into the age of Aquarius. What does that mean? That means when the starting reference point of the zodiac is in Aquarius. So we have 6 degrees left of Pisces before we enter into 29 degrees of Aquarius. But if you consider each degree of the zodiac is 72 years. So if you take 6 times 72, I think I get something like 430, somewhere around there. That's, I'll have to do the math. I'm not the mathematician, I should be, but I think that's about right. And so when you say we're dawning on the age of Aquarius, we've got a long ways to go till we get there. But we are closer than ever before. And Aquarius, I always say Aquarius is I know, whereas the sign Pisces is I believe. And during the time of 2,000 years ago, what happened? It was the advent of Christ coming to earth, and all the churches were built. And what is the sign Pisces symbolic of? The fish. What is the symbol of Christianity? The fish. So there's no accidents here. Everything is in divine order. And the age of Aquarius, yeah, we're getting there. But there's other ages in this cyclic process, such as the Kali Yuga and all of those cyclic processes too. But this is all based on this whole precessional cycle that I'm talking about. Okay, so that's what I wanted you to know about. And talking about getting to the time period when we are closest to the galactic center, where there is that consciousness, that God consciousness.
And why do the months of October and December of 2025 give us a glimpse of the golden age?
Yes. So here is what I'm looking at. So Jupiter, which is the planet that it takes 12 years for Jupiter to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. But there's a particular sign that Jupiter really loves to be in. It's its sign of exaltation, which is Cancer. So Jupiter is right now in Taurus, and it's going to go into Gemini May 14th. But by early October, it is going to zoom through the sign of Gemini. Of course, it's going to pull back and it's going to retrograde back through Gemini in the first 6 months of 2026. But it's going to be in Gemini from May to October. But in October, it touches foot into 0 degrees of Cancer, which is the sign of Jupiter's exaltation. And where all the other planets are relative to Jupiter tells me that we're going to have a glimpse of what Jupiter's going to be like when it goes into Cancer and stays there for a year. But it's going to be there from around the 3rd week of October to the 1st week of December of 2025. And this will give us a glimpse of the golden age that's to come, because Jupiter in Cancer is about prosperity, it's about healing, and it is most definitely going to be about the truth and spirituality that comes forth. So all of the events that are happening between now and October are leading us to a completion. And then we get this little window because Jupiter will be in Cancer, but only at 0 degrees. And the reason why this is so powerful at this time is that Jupiter will stand still at 0 degrees of Cancer. So here's the thing. When a planet turns retrograde or direct, it stands still and it stays at that degree for a long duration of time. All the planets do this, just like Venus stays in Pisces for so long because it's going retrograde. But Jupiter at 0 degrees of Cancer is going to be so powerful, and we're going to see the advent of what's to come when Jupiter will finally go into Cancer and stay there, which will be June of 2026. And that's the golden age. But we're going to get a glimpse. That stationing process empowers Jupiter enormously in the sign of Cancer, which will deal with true spirituality. And actually, here's another thing. It's going to be in one of my favorite nakshatras, which is called Purnavasu during that time. And that nakshatra means the return of the light. And I always say that that's my favorite nakshatra because it really has no shadows. It's all about goodness and truth and spirituality. So Jupiter standing still at that point opens our eyes to the reality of things, what we've experienced, what's happened before, and the lessons that we're going to gain from it. So many people are still, they can't see it yet, but we will all have this vision. And it's going to make for what I call the golden age that's coming. But we still have to go through a lot to get there. And we're going to learn great lessons. And as you well know, a lot of lessons, they don't come easy. But it is going to be a rebirth. And the birthing process, as I always say, is extremely painful. Being born hurts. But once you're on the other side, you're glad you went through it because that's the only way you can get there. And then we have this new world and new vision. People are going to wake up. There's going to be such a spiritual revolution and revelations coming that I have to say, this is what I'm so excited about.
When I heard Return of the Light, I got chills throughout my whole body. And I relate a lot of that as we're returning our power back into ourselves, our light back into ourselves, because for so long we've put it outside of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you say that one of the things that we need to look out for this year is the trend of cults. And when I hear the word cults, I immediately think of people that give their power away to something else. So how do we mitigate that return of the light with this trend that you're seeing emerging of cults and other organizations like that?
Right. So here's what I did. I went back historically and I looked at all the times that Saturn and Neptune came together, and a lot of similar times. I did this 6-hour workshop on what's going to be happening in 2025 based on what happened historically in the past. And what I found was with the Rahu Ketu where they are in Neptune, it's actually the Rahu Ketu where they're going in Pisces, where they are in Pisces right now in Virgo, as well as when they go back into Aquarius and Leo. But what I found was all these cults came about during that time. And what's remarkable is that the nodal axes of Rahu Ketu in Pisces and Virgo, there was the Jim Jones, when they had the that major cult, when people were drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think it was 1978, all the people died in that cult. And believe it or not, many years later, Rahu and Ketu in the same positions. It was the other cult. What was it? Where they were going to get onto Hale Bob, Marshall Applewhite. That cult came into being, and people had a mass suicide again. So we might be looking at some people that get so involved in cults. And like you say, it's when people give away their power. We have to always ask, what is this all about when we follow? And people are really trying to just escape the world. That's what Neptune's all about, escape. People want to get out. I mean, what did they do? They escaped the world through death, or cults that they feel like somebody in control can make their life better. But we have to be in control of our own selves, our own lives. And like you say, which is so true, find that divine God within us, not outside of us. And a lot of people have asked me, well, what's the difference between religion and spirituality? And this isn't exactly true, but in many cases it is. I always say spirituality is when we find God within ourselves, but religion is when we're searching for God outside of ourselves, generally. But, of course, a lot of religions can teach you God, the kingdom of God is within us, which it is. That's what it's all about. So we can't go searching outside of ourselves for other people that are going to heal us or do the work for us. We have to do the work, and it's all within in our divine connection. So people will be swayed by cults during these times. That's why I put that out there. Don't let other people be in control of your truth and your spirituality and what you know. Connect to the divine within yourself, and you'll never go wrong. So, and we are all connected with that. This is how we're all in a level of mass consciousness, connected through this divine source that we are all one with. And the more we realize this, the more we transcend the difficulties of this world. And I have to say, astrology, particularly the Vedic system, has woken me up into the truth and the reality of who we really are, our divinity. And I think, like I'm always saying, this is the missing component of who we are, connecting with astrology, understanding who we really are. And we are all connected to the stars and the planets. And this gives us the ability to connect and be part of the cyclic process, be in sort of control of understanding of who we are and what we are and how we're all connected and how we can all use the energy and the vibration of the planets, the stars, and be one with it. This is the missing component, I think, that we all need to get connected with. And one thing I will say, and this just came to me, when Rahu goes into the nakshatra Shatabishak, it's called the Sky Watcher, and it actually rules everything to do with the heavens, which of course, and space, which of course can be aliens and astronomy, but it is also astrology. And I believe astrology is going to make a comeback to its rightful place as the divine science that it is.
What will it take for astrology to become mainstream, apart from just getting people to share this video around with their friends?
Yes. Well, I tell my story. I go way back to when I was a child, and became aware of astrology. The thing about it is, working with it in my 45 years, I truly know it works. And if anybody has worked with it, I've lived it, I've experienced it. And my astrology, and I'm actually starting a series on my YouTube channel where I go into all of my astrology throughout my years and experiences, because my whole life has been dedicated to being an astrologer. Truly it has. And one thing I will say I'm very lucky and fortunate with is that I always knew what my destiny and work was. A lot of people, they change throughout their, and rightfully so, they change different purposes and destinies. But I always knew what mine was, and I've loved it. It's been my passion. It's been a blast. I can't wait to get out of bed every day to see what I'm going to learn through astrology. But going through being an astrologer, when you first learn astrology, you memorize what the planets mean, their keywords, what the houses mean, their keywords. But I've actually lived it. So looking at the planetary transits of my life, I know what they have brought. So it's not an understanding of memorization. It's an understanding of experience. And what they say, experiential life experiences is wisdom, because this is how we learn. So I say, as my life evolved and I watched my horoscope, I watched when Saturn came across my ascendant, my mother died. I know what that feels like in that energy. So I look at other people's charts with that level of understanding through experience, what it meant, what it felt like, not what I memorized, as well as when Ketu crossed over my sun, my father died. The sun is the father, and Ketu's losses, as well as when Jupiter crossed over my sun in the 5th house of children and I got pregnant. I mean, I experienced these planetary energies in my life, and all of these planets work in that way. So it's not just, it's like I've lived it, and it absolutely works. I tell some of the stories of prediction that one thing is, I'll never forget when I was a flight attendant, and I would tell people, I go into all these fun stories about being on the airplane, and I'd tell the flight attendants, I'm an astrologer. And usually I get all these mixed responses, but the two main ones is, when am I going to meet a rich guy? All these girls. I mean, it was obnoxious, right? So I didn't want to go there. So I wouldn't tell people like, when am I going to meet someone? Or that they wanted to save me because, I was following a satanic cult by being an astrologer. I mean, really, this is so ridiculous. So I had to put up with all these type of ridiculous things. So I was very careful who I told. But one time I was flying with this particular girl. Her name was Lucy. She told me she would tell the world about this because it really did happen. This is one of my many, 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 many stories. And I want to get to the one about my son, but I was flying with her. And in the past year, her husband died of cancer and both of her parents died. And, things happen in threes. But I was like, I wanted to know why her past year was so awful. So we were sitting waiting for our flight. And I said, do you happen to know what time you were born? Believe it or not, she knew what time she was born. Now, who knows that unless you're going to get your chart done? She actually knew what time she was born. I plugged it in my computer, and I noticed that on that very day, Jupiter was exactly on her sun in the 7th house. Now, let me explain to the novice what that means. The 7th house is the house of marriage. Now, Jupiter takes 12 years to go through the whole zodiac, so it's not a common occurrence for it to be exactly on that day on the sun. And the sun is your life force, who you are. And in her 7th house, it represents the marriage partner. So the 7th house is marriage. Jupiter was on that degree. And I looked at her, I said, Lucy, you're going to meet someone today that you're going to end up marrying. And she looked at me and she said, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. For one thing, I am grieving my husband right now. I don't want to meet anyone. And that scares me to death. So I said, okay, blew it off. I was flying up front, talking to the captain, and the captain had lost his wife in a car accident the year before. Didn't even think anything of it. I remember the next morning they went on a walk together, And, and then I didn't see her for a year. I'm in the flight attendant lounge. She comes running up to me a year later. And she says, Joni, you're not going to believe this. Remember that day we flew together and you said I was going to meet somebody I was going to marry? And I said, yeah. She said, well, I'm getting married. And it's to the pilot we met that day. These are all true stories. I'm not making this up. This is the power of astrology.
You were the astrology Cupid.
Yeah, well, I just couldn't believe I saw that in her chart that day. And, of course it worked. And to get to the story about my son, this is another one. Now, my son, my youngest son, Austin, he knows, all my family knows how astrology works. There's no doubt. So he would get in his phone, he would put all his transits, he would type them into his phone for each day. I would give him a reading every 3 months so that he could have the transits as to, what days were good or bad and what to live by. So I'm looking at his chart.
That's a cool mom, by the way.
But I know. I am so close to my sons. I always say that my university, where I teach Vedic astrology online, is one of my greatest accomplishments in life, except for my 3 sons. Because let me tell you, my 3 sons are my greatest accomplishment in my life. But Austin, my youngest, so he's sitting there putting all these dates in. I'm looking at this astrological alignment in his chart. I said, Austin, you're going to meet the girl you're going to end up marrying on this day. He says, Mom, I am so busy with my career. I'm not interested in that. I said, well, I don't know. Just be aware. Okay.
He just stays at home the whole day. He's like, I'm not leaving.
Well, it was through his business that there was some party or something that he went to. Very interesting. And he meets this girl. And I mean, it is love at first sight. And they are talking for hour upon hour. And he realizes this is the one. I don't know. I've never been like that where I met, it had to kind of grow into something. But this was it. And get this, he tells her, he said, my mom is an astrologer. Of course, usually my boys had to prepare these girls and tell them this because it might mean a make or break thing in the relationship. But he says,
well, it's a good filter. The ones that don't resonate will run away.
That's
and
right.
You get the ones that are good for you.
Exactly. So he tells her this. My mom's an astrologer, and she told me I was going to meet you today. And he shows her the phone, and she didn't run away. So they ended up getting married. And that's the beauty of astrology. But from that point on, my son said, Mom, wouldn't it be great if everyone had this tool in their phone? And he being the entrepreneur that he is, he decided, with me writing every aspect of what it means for every planet when it comes across different houses, what it means, I created this whole lineup of interpretations, thousands and, and thousands I wrote. And now he created it. It's not an app. It's like an app, but it's better than an app because all of the predictions from your birth chart, and it calculates your individual birth chart. It's called the Galactic Planner. He helped me create it, name it, everything, because he wanted this to be for everyone out there. And so with all these interpretations, it goes into your calendar on your phone or your computer so that you get these transits every day. You'll know what's going on. And we just put it out there recently. It's called the Galactic Planner. So it's galacticplanner.com if you guys are interested. This is one of my greatest inventions because, with readings are, the most powerful way of doing this. But I can't read for everyone in the world. There's only one of me. So the planner helps get this out to everyone.
Yeah, beautiful. And we're also putting in that link to get the Galactic Planner in the show notes.
All right.
And they can just type in my name and they'll get a discount on that beautiful tool that you created with Austin.
Yes.
I'm excited to try it out.
Yes. I can't wait to hear what you think about it, because it really is a tool to help give us guidance. I mean, it's like I said, there's a better time to do things. Use that energy along with all the transformational energy that we use every day to change our consciousness and grow spiritually. But it must be that we really do use all the tools and the divine with the stars, the planets. We're all connected. Use that tool, and it can give our life betterment. And, with astrology, we can follow a path that makes it the path of least resistance, right? That makes it easier for us.
You brought up Yukteswar a few moments ago in the conversation. And there was a quote that he said that you mentioned in our last episode together that says, "There's nothing more powerful than the will of man or woman.
Yes.
It even outwits astrology." So to begin wrapping up this beautiful conversation on, the predictions and everything that's coming, where is the role of the will of man in all of these processes that are carrying out?
Right. So, it's really, really hard for people sometimes to tap into that willpower. But willpower is the most important thing. So, and I always say, as an astrologer, in Vedic astrology, the third house and Mars actually rule willpower. And and believe it or not, I always say the third house is the most underrated house in a horoscope because it rules our willpower. And, people can overcome anything with their will, but it's really hard to get people to tap into that willpower sometimes. Sometimes our willpower is weak. We don't feel like doing certain things sometimes. So the astrology can give us that power to find out when the best time to do things to tap into, when our willpower is stronger, and avoid the times when it's weaker. But Paramahansa Yogananda, who was Yukteswar's student and a self-realized master, he took his horoscope because Yukteswar had calculated his horoscope and told him he was going to have problems in marriage. And Yogananda said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take care of that. Let me burn my horoscope, and I'm going to become a saint." So through his willpower, he avoided the problems that he would have with real estate. With relationships. So here's the thing. Most of us are not going to become self-realized masters as Yogananda did. Eventually we will, maybe in some evolution of our lifetimes, but to use willpower is so powerful, and it can overcome and outwit the stars. That's what Paramahansa Yogananda said. But we are all connected with the stars, and we can all use this energy. But don't forget how powerful our willpower is.
And not just our own, but the collective one. We
absolutely
said in our last conversation that quote that I love by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is, "A collective network of observers determines reality."
Yes.
So when you get a large number of people focusing on an outcome, they change destiny. And I was curious to know if you've ever changed your destiny from what you were seeing within your chart.
Yes, that is so wonderful that you asked that. And yes, I have. I absolutely have. There was a time when Neptune was opposing my moon, and I knew that there would be deception coming from a woman, and I was able to avert it. And let me tell you, it was really tough because some of the things were so good to be true that I had those little red flags, and I knew Neptune was opposing the moon. The moon represents women, and I was able to avert that particular situation. And, you know, my whole question goes back to, you know, this about me, that when I was really small and I saw Gene Dixon tell President Kennedy on TV, do not go to Dallas or you will be assassinated. I saw it with my own two eyes when it happened the next day. That's what got me into astrology. I thought, what if he followed what she said? What if he had listened? Would the whole fate of the world been different with Kennedy not being assassinated?
What a different world. What
Yes.
a different parallel reality.
Exactly. So that's where I think, yes, we can avert things. So some things are meant to happen and they will happen, and you can see it in the horoscope. But some things we can avert and we have free will with. And like I say, to look at your horoscope, to use it for what it's good for. I believe astrology is used to empower people, to see what their gifts are, what their purpose is. And with that, follow that path. Life is easier. And that's the beauty of how astrology can help us.
What are some of those things that may be like set in stone destiny points in our life?
Well, you know, for one thing is the parents we choose coming into this world, the families we choose, that is definitely set in stone because of certain karmas of the past of people we need to work things out with, and possibly and probably even the people that we come together and marry. You know, there's a certain destiny. So I believe those are fated in destiny things that we can't avoid. And to be perfectly honest with you, Emilio, some of the things we can see the tendencies in the chart, but we don't know exactly everything that's destiny and fated. But we do know that there's a certain amount of free will. So we've got to use and exercise our free will and our willpower as much as possible.
Beautiful. And Joni, we end every show, as you know, with a segment called The Final Trio, which are just little questions that we ask at the end of every episode. But before that, I would love to open the space for you to tell the audience where they can find you, your work, any upcoming new projects that you're involved in. We already mentioned the Galactic Planner. Anything else that you would like to send people to connect with you even deeper?
Thank you for that. Well, my YouTube, which is my name, Joni Patry, I constantly put things out there to inspire people. The other big one is my university, where I teach Vedic astrology all online, and it is international. There are people in every continent in the world that are part of my university. It's all online. It's universityofvedicastrology.com. It's self-paced. I do live classes for it every single week. And it has semesters. You can get certified in Vedic astrology. You get a live tutor. There's 40 videos that you watch, then you take a test, and your tutor grades it and answers all your questions. Along with that, I have live classes to answer questions with everyone. It takes about a year to complete. Some people can do it quicker. It depends on, you know, how fast, how much time they want to dedicate. But once you become part of it, it never expires. And you can come join my classes till the end of time, till I'm here, all the time. And it's just really created an amazing community of people. Now, the other community that I have going on is my Patreon page, and you can find all of that on my website, which is galacticcenter.org. My Patreon page, I have live classes as well. As a matter of fact, in 30 minutes, I'm going to have my Patreon class where we have shooting stars, where it's more spiritually based. It's not just astrology, but I have an incredible group of people that come together every week with that. And I have an online magazine, Joni Patry's Astrology Insights. That magazine comes with the Patreon package, and I give away free readings with it. But most of all, it's a community, a network of people. So my Patreon, my magazine, my YouTube, and of course my new book, which has just come out. And But I have to say, my university is one of my greatest accomplishments because my biggest mission, I believe, in this world is to make Vedic astrology mainstream. I want everyone to see the beauty of how your life can change and transform through using astrology. We can all use this science, it's universal.
And I feel like now, with the advent of the internet and all these technologies and people awakening to their true selves, astrology is going to be a major player in
Mhm.
people getting to know themselves. So I have very high hopes that it will become mainstream. And if there's anything that I can contribute in that movement, it's an honor. So
Thank you.
for the final trio, the first question I had for you is, I've heard you use the word omens a lot. And it's actually a word that is in my favorite book, The Alchemist. And I was wondering, what is the greatest omen that you've ever received in your life?
Oh my gosh, that is a beautiful question. I have to say, the most beautiful one of all was after my best friend died in the early 90s. She would communicate with me through my mind. And, most people would say, well, are you schizophrenic? Are you crazy? And we used to run together. I used to be run. I love being a runner. But I would communicate with her when I'd run. And then one day I started thinking, she told me about what the other side was like. She told me that it was much like you became one with everything. And she said, Joni, you're not going to be able to understand it being in human form. And being in human form, you feel so separate. You feel like you're in this body and separate from everything. She says, but once you're on the other side, you're one with everything. And she says, it's actually a much more natural state of being than being separate. So one day when I was running, I thought, you know what? I'm crazy. I'm making all this stuff up in my head. Lynn, you're not really talking to me. So I said out loud, I said, Lynn, if this is really you talking to me, make the song Closing Time come on the radio. Back then I had this big thing where I had to listen to radio stations to listen to my music when I ran. I kid you not. The second that I said that song started playing. And I will never discount spirit, other worlds, and the power of omens. And really, there's a whole omen that happened around her death, too, to get to symbology, because that was kind of like her communicating with me. But the omen that happened was I didn't know she was sick. She wasn't telling me, and she kind of cut off communicating with me. And I thought, is she mad at me? One day, a picture of her and I appeared in my bathroom where I always get dressed. But why did this picture appear here? And believe it or not, it was next to a cutout of another friend of mine who had committed suicide the year before. And somehow the picture of Lynn and I somehow got placed next to that picture. And I thought, I wonder, is there something wrong with her? And then I thought, no, she's okay. She's just mad at me. Well, I kid you not, 3 days after that picture appeared in my bathroom, I got a call from her sister that she had passed. And that was an omen. So we have to pay attention to all that the spirit world is trying to reveal to us through omens and synchronicity.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. The second question I had for you is, what is the highest potential that you are seeing for humanity through astrology?
Oh, gosh, I love that. That people realize that it is a true science and that it connects us to our divinity and consciousness in God. That is truly what astrology can do for us. It is really becoming one with the cycles of everything. And when we do this, we will become self-realized. So it is a tool for self-realization. And I have seen this. It has really, really helped me grow spiritually. And I want that for everyone.
Beautiful. Last time we talked about Pisces and Aquarius, Pisces being, I believe, and Aquarius being I know, and that we're entering into an age where we need to go from belief to knowing. So I wanted to ask you there, what is one thing about the nature of the universe that you know rather than just believe? So one thing that you know beyond just belief.
Well, I know that we are all the divinity of God. And when it's not like believe is kind of like I hope, I believe. Knowingness is that we're there. And one thing I do know, like astrology is my mission on this planet. I know I've said that before. I know that Vedic astrology is going to be mainstream, and I'm going to be part of that to bring that to fruition. And I hope that all my students, everyone comes together with this knowingness, because it makes life simpler and easier when we understand why we're here and our purpose. Then we're not afraid anymore. There's no such thing as fear, and there is nothing but love and connectedness with all that is and the divine. And the divine is that power of love. So astrology is simply just a tool that puts us in contact with all that. And I know we are all going to that.
It's amazing to see how you have this unwavering commitment to that mission, and the way that you're carrying out is such an inspiration for all of us to even know, like, if you want to create massive impact in the world, it's about showing up on a consistent basis. And that's what I see reflected in you. Mm-hmm. And thank you for being such an amazing translator of this mystical language that we don't even know where it came from. Truly could have been, from some other dimension.
Right.
But you've been translating it in the most beautiful way. And it's such an honor to be able to have the opportunity to continue this conversation with you. And I hope to continue it many, many, many more times. Thank you so much, Joni.
Thank you. And I want you to know you are such a beautiful interviewer. And you have the same thing about you. You are so divinely connected and passionate and unwavering in your ability and your desire to bring the truth out to humanity and heal the world. You're amazing, Emilio, and I am so honored to be interviewed by you. You're very special. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're very special as well.